I dreamed of rain and the rains came, soft and easy, sweet and good. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came, and peace spread over the land. I dreamed of rain and the rains came.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so glad to have you here. The very last Sunday of the year. And we're going to do something that I like to do a couple of times a year, and I always kind of like to do it close to the end of the year. We're going to do a question and answer today. And I came across a story, naturally. There was a young boy talking to his dad, and he said, "Dad, why is the sky blue?" And Dad said, "Well, I don't know, son. Well, I don't really know." And he said, "Well, Dad, let me ask you, why is the grass green?" "Well, I don't know. And he went on and he says, "Well, why can't we see forever?" "Well, I don't know." And he kept going like this, and he'd ask another question, and the dad would say, "Well, I don't know." And they said, "Well, Dad, do you mind me asking all these questions?" He said, No, of course not, son, of course not. It's important for you to ask questions. How are you going to learn?" So one of the things I'm going to invite the ushers to do is to pass out a card and a pen. I'd like to ask all of you to take a card and a pen, and we're going to take a second and just reflect a moment. And I'm going to ask you to write down some questions. Write down any question that you have about unity, about spirituality, about spiritual growth. And I am going to do what they sometimes call in Hindu, the Hindu religion, we're going to do satsang. And actually one of our members here called it Stump the Chump. So I'm going to try and answer some questions that you might have, and if I don't have the answer, I suspect the answer's in the room somewhere. And if not, we're going to just meditate and pray on those and listen to the questions, because oftentimes our unfoldment and our growth and our spirituality comes in the questions as much as it does in the answers. I love, there's a wonderful poem by Rilke, and I can't remember it all, but one of the things he says is just live in the question until eventually the answer will come. I don't know how to, it's a paraphrase, but it's an awareness that living in the question is really what it's about. So I'm going to take some time, and I'll ask you to just take a nice deep breath. Breathe in a second. Breathe into the heart space and just listen. And if there's a question that's been on your heart and on your mind, take a second and write down the question. And you can write a couple of them if you like. And I'm going to sit while I do this, so I'm going to rearrange a little bit here. And if you're new to unity, if there's some question you have about unity, then certainly feel free to ask that question as well. So let's just take a minute and as we write, and we'll collect those in a moment. So if you have a question that you've written and you feel complete with writing your question at this point, feel free to hold it up and we'll ask our ushers to come by and collect those. And if you're not quite done yet, that's okay. We'll wait for a moment. But those of you who are already ready, we can maybe begin answering some of them. Okay, great. Thank you.
What would you do without Lord Rodney?
Don't even ask that question. Don't even ask that question. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. That's one I don't even want to go to. She's just indispensable, I think. All right, so I'm going to just do a little shuffle here, you know. Let's see what we got here. Here's an interesting question, and I think it's actually a good one for this time of year. And well, I don't know why for this time of year. It's a good question anytime, really. There's actually a couple here. Thank you. What are Unity's beliefs on angels and saints? Well, you know, I always have really interesting thoughts when someone say, what are Unity's beliefs? I'll start there. Because Unity does not prescribe a particular doctrine or dogma. We don't say we believe this or we believe that. Sometimes we say it, but that's not really what we're meaning. Unity has a body of teachings that are based upon spiritual principles, that are based on the teachings of Jesus. And Jesus teaches spiritual principles that all of us can learn from and grow from to develop our own unique divine expression of the Christ, as we refer to it. And so I always hesitate when someone says, well, what does Unity believe? Well, Unity is not a particular individual set of beliefs. We have basic teachings and awarenesses, and these teachings are basically experiential things that we've learned through our own prayer and meditation times, but we don't expect or say that everybody has to believe all of the things that we're saying and teaching. In fact, that's why we do the question and answers, because we want you to question. We want you to question. Anything I get up here and say on Sunday, you ought to be questioning. And I encourage you to question. I think you may find that's different in many places, but that's one of the things that we know is that there's a spirit within every one of us that if we will listen and ask those questions, there's an answer that will come. And it may come through something that's said on Sunday morning, or it may come while we're having fellowship over here and with our mouth full, or you know, often comes better when our mouth is full. That way our ears are more open. And we're talking less and listening more, if you know what I mean. So I start with that kind of premise to understand that Unity doesn't have a specific belief about angels per se, but Unity does look at Scripture and symbols within Scripture from a metaphysical perspective. And when we say metaphysical, we're meaning beyond the physical. Beyond the physical really has to do in the realm of spirit, that which is beyond our physical eyes and form. And there are principles at work within that spiritual realm and in the physical realm. And angels are embodiments of a spiritual awareness. So when we have an experience of angels, they may actually appear to us in a form, but they are representative and they share with us some spiritual message. In fact, angels really are messengers of God. And so they come to us as insights and awarenesses, and sometimes we experience those there are people who experience them in a very clear form, and they see things, they see an experience of that. And each of those are there to show us some awareness of the presence of God in that circumstance or situation, or to help us move beyond our limited thinking of that point. It's a higher energy and vibration, you might say. And they're there to help us to really see and experience more of the possibilities of the presence of God in our lives and within ourselves. So that's how I understand Unity's basic awareness and ideas about angels. And saints are really those who are working to experience more of their divine nature. I would, in many sense, there are many saints in this room, in my opinion. There are people who are here who are really committed to learning and growing spiritually. And a saint is one who demonstrates many of their divine spiritual qualities in life and are there to encourage and to uplift others in that as well. So that's kind of my understanding of angels and saints. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. How does unity differ from Unitarian Universalists? Well, we're very, very similar in many ways. I always like to look at our similarities more than our differences and things. But in unity, we do feel there are universal principles at work, and we believe that those principles are at work in all religions. That's something that we have in common with the Unitarian Universalist. Probably one of the differences that I would say is that unity tends to focus more on the teachings of Jesus and the principles that Jesus is trying to teach, whereas in the Unitarians they can be, it's not necessarily as focused in the teachings of Jesus, and that truly depends upon the different Unitarian congregations and the unity congregations as well. There's, again, because we don't say you have to believe this, we don't have a creed that you have to follow. Unity groups tend to have a variation in their awareness, and we have some basic ideas and principles that we teach, but they're not dogma. And so therefore there's a great variety in the different awarenesses and teachings. Every congregation has a little different awareness and a different way of presenting the truth principles that we all try to practice and work with. Let's see. So our word for today was forgiveness, and this question is, I need ideas for strategies for forgiveness. Wow, that's a really good one. Yeah, ideas and strategies for forgiveness. You know, one of my favorite sayings is, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better yesterday. Think about that one for a moment. And if we are really holding on to an anger, a hurt, a resentment, we are really holding on to a memory of something that happened in the past. I was just listening to an amazing program on NPR about memory. You guys, any of you hear that? A fantastic TED Talk on memory, and all of our memories, I'm not sure the term they use, but all of our memories are reconstructions. Are you aware of that? Everything that we think that we remember, there are really no facts in memory. There are impressions and reconstructions of experiences. And so when we have these experiences, what we're holding on to is an interpretation of an experience. And it's an interpretation of a reconstruction of an experience. And what we do is we keep going over and over that reconstruction of that experience over and over again. And there is an emotional, energetic charge to that experience. And so part of the thing that I have begun to learn, and I'm still learning and still working with, is that part of the work of forgiveness is letting go of the need to hold on to the past and try to get it to be different.
Say that again.
Yeah, let me say it a different way maybe. It's as I said before, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better yesterday. In a very real sense, what we're doing when we're holding on to those energies is we're trying to get the past to be different. And I'm going to ask how many of you have been really successful at that. It's kind of a futile exercise, isn't it? Now, I say that to some extent, but the reality is we cannot get the past to be experienced, to be different, but what we can do is get our energy and our experience and our memory and our recollection and our reconstruction of those experiences to be different. And part of that is a releasing work. And a releasing work really is letting go of the energy that we've gotten stored up around that particular experience. A lot of the pains, the hurts, the frustrations, and that sort of thing. One of my that I've learned over the last, probably since 2007, I would say, is the emotional freedom technique work that I do. And I've shared that with a number of you, and it's been a real blessing. It is a releasing statement. It is a releasing practice. It is a forgiveness practice. It is a way of not necessarily letting go of the experience, but letting go of the energy of the experience. And by doing that, you're no longer feeling the kind of same feelings. You're not triggered by those experiences. So that's one technique, but there's lots of wonderful techniques. We're going to do a fantastic service next week called the Burning Bowl service, and it's a wonderful service for letting go. It's a way of letting go of past experiences and letting go of the energy around past experiences. And it works on a very deep subconscious level, I feel, a very deep soul level, to let go of those things that we're holding on to. Now, one of the reasons why we hold on to these resentments and hurts and fears is because in our ego consciousness, we believe that if we let that go, that it's going to happen to us again. We think it's there to protect us. We think our hurts, our angers, our fears are there to protect us. But what we don't understand is that we're doing just the opposite. By holding on to hurts and angers and resentments, we're holding on to that consciousness, and we're vibrating at that level, as Abraham Hicks would say. We're vibrating with that energy. And therefore, we're actually in the process of creating new experiences like that in order to heal that energy. And that's why we find ourselves having these same kind of experiences over and over and over again, don't we? We find that we have the same patterns going because we're holding on to the same kind of energy, and therefore we're putting that out, and therefore the law of attraction, we're drawing to us those kinds of experiences again. And so if we finally get to the place where we're ready to stop doing that, and I think we do consciously oftentimes, we try to stop having those experiences by pushing them away, but we push them away with the same energy that we're using to draw them. That make sense? We're trying to push them away with the angers, the hurts, the resentments. But the anger, the hurts, and resentments are exactly what's drawing them to us. And so when we want to create new experiences, we want to create it from a new energy place. And we want to create it from a new awareness and a new feeling. And we want to bless those circumstances and situations. We want to put out positive energy into that experience. We want to bless those who hurt us. Yes, that's even, pray for those who hurt us. Why do we want to do that? Because we don't want the same stuff back again, right? So techniques, just began to look at the situation and realize, what am I putting out about this? And begin to see if you can shift your focus and your energy into understanding that everything that goes on in our life and our experience is there to help us to heal in some way, to help us be transformed in some way, to help us to grow into a greater expression of love, as the Course in Miracles says. The Course in Miracles says there's really only fear and love, and fear is not real. And so if we are holding on to those fearful ideas of hurt and pain and frustration and resentment, we're kind of stuck in a place of wrestling with something that doesn't exist. It's not real. So we shift our energy back to an awareness that ultimately there's only one presence and one power in this universe. And even in those circumstances, that presence and power is at work for us. Wow, I have to listen to this again to hear what I said. Oh, wow. Yeah, no kidding. Thank you, Charles. Here's a really good question. Is Unity a Christian church? Yes and no. You know, that's a really challenging one to answer. And the reason it's challenging is because the term Christian has so many different variations today. And there are those who have, as I say, kind of usurped that term and that title. And when you say that term and that title, it tends to bring up images and awarenesses in people that are not necessarily definitive of what the wholeness of Christianity is and can be. In Unity, we say our teachings are based in the teachings of Jesus the Christ. And our understanding of Christ is that Christ is not Jesus' last name. That Christ is that spiritual principle of the perfect idea of wholeness that mankind was created in. And Jesus came to show us that. And his work throughout our history was to show us the potential and the possibility of each and every one of us. And so when someone says, well, are you Christian? They generally are thinking of a traditional theological understanding of the man, Jesus, and the worship of Jesus. And in Unity, we tend to lean more toward following what Jesus was trying to show us and what Jesus was trying to teach us. And rather than putting Jesus up on a pedestal, we do honor him as our elder brother and way shower and teacher, but we put more emphasis on what he was trying to show us that's in us. He said, the things that I have done, ye shall do also, and even greater things. And so there's something more that is there for us when we think about that. And so I hesitate to say that Unity is Christian. Our foundation is in the teachings of Jesus, and yet we also believe that there are truths in all religions that are trying to help us to discern and develop our spiritual nature. And so we have no qualms from quoting from Buddha. We have no qualms of quoting from Muhammad. We have no qualms of quoting who are teaching spiritual principles to help us each to learn and grow more in our own unique divine nature. And we honor all religions because we do believe that ultimately there's only one God. There's only one divinity. And we are all a part of that divinity. We're not separate from it. And the more we can recognize and awaken to that knowing of our connection in that divinity, we find that we don't need these labels of, well, I'm Christian and I'm Buddhist and I'm Hindu. And Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, the co-founders of Unities, were great students of all religions, and they honored all religions. And yet they found something within the teachings of Jesus that was a real foundational awareness for them. And they have promoted a lot of the understandings of those teachings as an awareness of how we can each grow more in our own spiritual nature. Does that make sense? So I hesitate when someone says, is it a Christian church? Because I have a feeling they have a certain idea in their head of what that means. And I feel Unity is much more inclusive than even that title or that label of Christianity, at least in the minds of so many people. Does that make sense? All right. How are we doing here? All right. Okay. Sometimes I want to skip over these, and because some of them are challenging, but I'm going to come back to this one because it challenges me at times myself. If God is a God of love, then how does abuse or war happen? I don't want to be too simplistic with this, and yet I don't want to go too deep either, because I think you can get lost in the esotericness of our spiritual nature. First of all, it's important to understand that you and I are created in the image and after the likeness of the divine. We start at that. That's a very, very important basic principle. There's only one presence and one power in the universe. You and I are a part of that. We were created out of divine stuff. If there's only if you recognize in in Scripture it says, in the beginning there was God. And it didn't say there was God and something else. It didn't say that till later on, actually. That was a belief system that developed that there was such a thing as God and something else. Ultimately, that was the fall of humankind, you might say. The fall of humankind was a belief that there is something else, something other than the divine. It was a fall in our awareness and our understanding. But you see, you and I were created in the image and after the likeness of the divine, which means we are created of God's stuff, because that's all there was to create us out of. And that's always been the case. And yet, we accepted a belief system in some way that said that there's something other than that. And we have been, there's a saying I often heard that God created us in God's image and after God's likeness, and ever since we've been trying to return the favor. And we keep trying to create the divine in the image of some limited human, petty thing or being out there, the old man with a gray beard that's vengeful, and we've been trying to recreate God in our image for centuries. And in doing so, we have done that as a way of trying to somehow make ourselves more important, and that my image of God, my image of reality, my image of the world is the real one. And if you don't agree with my image, my job is to force you to agree with it. You follow what I'm saying? And that's where our wars and our abuse comes from. It comes from a belief system that says, I have to get you to think and see and be the way I think and see and be. That's where all of it comes from. That's where all of our conflicts come from. There's an ego consciousness that feels like it has to get others to look and to see and to be the way we image things, the way we see things. And I believe all of our conflicts come from that. And it's a belief system that says, I'm here and you're there, and we are totally separate things and beings, and so therefore we are trying to get, it's interesting that the reality is, in some ways, all of our abuses and our wars are trying, in many ways, to get us to be one, but in a distorted way. Can you see that? It's a distortion of trying to get us to be one, when in reality we already are. We already are. And if we can remember that, if we can really wake up to that knowing that really we're all one, then we no longer need to get something to change in order for it to be one, in order for us to be connected, in order for us to be a part of the oneness. And yet that's what our conflicts tend to be about. We tend to try and get the world to be the way we think the world is supposed to be. We try to create it in our image. And what really I think can shift that is recognizing that our image is a concept that we have about ourselves, a belief system. And as Eckhart Tolle says, don't believe everything you think. Don't believe everything you think, because the reality is a lot of our thinking is our simply trying to get this amazing oneness to look like something that we think it's supposed to look like. Make sense? Yeah. Well, let's see. I think we got time for maybe one more. Couple more? Well, one of the reasons why I do this is because this gives me lots of fuel for lessons, for other lessons. So this is a series, you might say, so we won't stop here. I kind of covered that one a little bit already. I'm going to move on. I'm not sure. I'm not quite. I can see if I can read this. How can I show more love? How can I show more love to my husband? And I'm going to expand that to how can I show more love to my spouse, to my significant other? You know, one of the things that, and boy, that's a great question, actually. We can all use more of that, can't we? Yeah. Here's one of the things that I am still learning, and but I got some years ago that I keep reminding myself, and it helps. It helps me to remind myself, is that everything that I am looking for, this actually fits pretty well, not only for spouses, but if those of you who are single and you would like to be in a relationship, one of the things that I think is really valuable is to sit down and write down all of the qualities that you would like to experience in a partner. And do this as those of you who are married, I encourage you to still do this. Write down all the qualities that you would like to see and experience in your partner. All of those, wonderful qualities that you would like to experience in your relationship. And then get up every day and try to be more like that. And stop trying to get your partner to be like that. Totally give up getting them to be the way you want them to be. And you try to be that person that you've been trying to get them to be. You follow that? Now, is that easy? But that is the work of relationships, isn't it? The reality is, I love what Ram Dass taught me many years ago, and he said, relationships are our highest yoga. Yoga means teaching. Relationships are our highest yoga. They're our highest teaching. We learn more about our nature and about our possibilities in our relationships than in any other way. And what we have a tendency to do is to project out onto our partner all of those things that are being called from within us to be more like, to grow into. But what we're trying to do is get them to show it to us. But what we really want to do is develop it within ourselves and express it within ourselves. And in addition to that, begin to not only develop it within ourselves, but begin to affirm it in our partner as well. When I say affirm it, just see them as whole, see them as complete, see them as healthy, see them as loving, see them as gracious or considerate or whatever it is that you're looking. But you can't do that to the exclusion of developing those qualities within yourself. The more we develop those qualities in ourselves, the law of attraction will actually draw those forth in that experience and in that relationship. And one of two things is going to happen. Either your partner is, and this is just, something, you'll like this or you won't. One of two things is going to happen. Your partner is going to begin to reflect back to you those qualities that you yourself are expressing. And if they are not comfortable reflecting that back, or if they're not comfortable in growing that way, if they are not ready to grow in that way, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to grow in that way, or they're going to find someone who reflects back to them what they are wanting to see, and what they're used to see. And you will find that this is one of the primary reasons, I think, why so many of our relationships split up. We create this image of our partners. And you might say that my hand is the image, there's a concept that I have about my partner. And it usually forms when we're falling in love, and it's a really, really, really glowing image that we have of our partners, right? And then we get married or we then date for a while, and what we find is that our partner kind of steps out from behind that image of, have you noticed that? All of a sudden, wait a minute, that's not who you are, get back there. And we try to get them to meet and match our image of them, right? What we fall in love with is really an image, a concept, a belief system that we have about them. But we haven't, by doing that, we're not really learning who they truly are. We're not really seeing them. We just saw the movie Avatar. Remember, some of you just saw that? I love that saying when they say, I see you. And what they're saying is, I see into you as who you truly are, and I love you that way. And I accept you that way. And I appreciate you that way. Now, there's the work, isn't it? We love the image we have, but when people are real, they step outside of that image. And so we tend to try to get them to go back into that image. But really, to be able to connect with someone on a deep level, what we really have to do is be as clear as we can the image and the people that we want to experience in life, and at the same time accept our partners exactly as they are and know that they are being who they know how to be and who they are and who they can be. And they will either begin to reflect that back, but if they're uncomfortable with that, and we're constantly trying to get them to match our image of them, it's not going to work. They're going to find someone. Here's another way I say it. We all have what I call hooks. We all have these hooks, you see. And these hooks are both our positive and negative challenges. We have these hooks of our emotional baggage, our emotional things that go on in life. Some of them are really positive, some of them are not so positive. And when we fall in love, what we do is we hook into someone who matches our hooks. But as we begin to transform and heal our hooks, we heal some of our baggage, we let go of some of those, our partner has a choice. They either do the same, but if they've still got the hooks and they're not choosing to do that, they're going to go and find somebody else that matches their hooks. And therefore, we wind up having these completed relationships, as I call it. They may be completed for us. They may not be completed for our partners because they're out there still looking for someone to match what their hooks are. Does that make sense? And so what I really encourage people to do in any relationship situation is if you can use your relationship as a spiritual practice to develop you, then it can be very powerful and a very deep relationship. Is it easy? I'll be honest with you, it's not. It's a challenge. It's one of our biggest challenges, but also one of our biggest spiritual opportunities in life. It is, I believe, our highest yoga. So, well, actually, I would love to do this all day, but I don't want to keep you guys for too much longer, and I want us to honor our time together. And so I thank you for letting me play this little game that I like to do. And there will be more later, I promise you. We'll work with some of these. Thank you. Let's move into our meditation time. So let's move into a comfortable place and take a nice deep breath. Breathe into the heart space. We open our hearts, our minds, our whole being into that awareness and the willingness to experience and feel and know our oneness in spirit, our oneness with the divine. Putting aside all of our limiting thoughts and beliefs that would stand in the way, any fears, any doubts, any unforgiveness, any anxieties or resentments, we'll just release those at this time. You feel you need them, you can hang on to them, but put them aside for now. Here and now. In that presence, we listen to that still small voice. That still small voice that's calling us to come up higher, to see more fully. That still small voice that is reassuring and comforting. That voice that's always there to guide us and direct us in love. It may come to us as simply a feeling or a knowing. It may come to us as an actual voice. It may come to us as just an insight or an image or a flash of knowing. Let your heart and mind simply be open to the wisdom, the inspiration, and guidance of Spirit. And know that ultimately, whatever the question, love is the answer. Whatever the question, love is the answer. Breathe that in it now. Let your heart be filled with the reassurance and the comfort of this knowing that we are surrounded, we are filled, we are an embodiment of the love that God is. And we're grateful for the unfolding of that in our awareness, in our thoughts, words, and deeds, and as we go forth from here today in our expression in life. Take another nice deep breath and give thanks that that is always available to us. Take another nice deep breath, and when you're ready, gently open your eyes.